Hi, I'm Camila. When my parents' will was read, they chuckled as they handed my sister Isolda $6 million and gave me just a single dollar. Go make your own way, they said. My mother sneered, some children simply fall short. But it wasn't the dollar that broke me, it was the years they spent quietly locking me out of Grandpa's life. They lied to both of us, stole our moments, and left me behind while they positioned themselves to take it all. I thought they'd erased me completely. But when the lawyer pulled out Grandpa's final letter, and my mother started to scream, that's when I knew. They thought I was buried. But that letter? That letter was the shovel that dug them out. Before we get to that part, what time are you listening, and where are you? Drop a comment. I want to know. Ready to hear what was in the letter? I arrived at the family estate in Charleston just as the last of the morning mist burned off. The cicadas buzzed in the heat like they were warning me. The oaks towered over the gravel path, their moss hanging low, and I parked in the same spot where I used to ride my bike in messy loops, back when I still believed home meant safety. In the car mirror, I caught sight of myself, a simple blouse, tied back hair, nothing like the elegant gowns my sister would choose. My hands trembled as I grabbed my purse, carrying the weight of the distance it took to return. I hesitated, looking up at the tall white porch, the rocking chairs lined up like sentries. I didn't know why I came back. Maybe just to see if I could stand there and not fall apart. Inside, the scent of lemon polish mixed with something older, sharper, a reminder of holidays spent holding my breath. My mother, Vera, sat near the fireplace, her legs crossed precisely, her expression blank except for a tight line around her mouth. My father, Conrad, clutched a glass of water like it might anchor him, nodding without really seeing anyone. Isolda stood near the window, laughing, champagne in hand, sunlight glinting off her gold jewelry. When her gaze landed on me, she sized up my outfit, smirked, then turned away to resume her chit-chat. I took a seat in the corner, trying to still my bouncing knees under the table. Marshall Keene, the family lawyer, cleared his throat and tapped a stack of papers against the table. Thank you for being here, he said, his eyes moving across the room. Walter Garner left specific instructions. His will is to be read in the presence of all family. I clasped my hands together, pressing down hard to keep them from shaking. I could feel them staring, judging. I remembered the invitation they sent, listing my name as guest +1. When I called to correct it, the secretary stumbled through an apology. Must have been a mistake, she'd said. I laughed, but the kind that hurts. Marshall began. He read through the list of donations to charities, small gifts to distant relatives. Then he paused. His gaze shifted to me. To Camila Garner, he read. $1. The room froze for a beat. Then the laughter hit. I heard my own pulse in my ears. Isolda's laugh was first, sharp and gleaming. Some kids just don't measure up, she said, swirling her drink. I stared at the creased dollar bill Marshall handed me, my fingers curling around it. Then my mother's voice sliced through the ringing in my head, cool, composed. Go earn your own, Camila, she said, like she was offering advice, not humiliation. Chuckles rippled through the room. I lowered my gaze, staring at the floor, wishing it would split open. My cheeks burned. But I didn't cry. I wouldn't. Isolda caught my eye and raised her glass in a fake toast before turning back to her plans for renovations, with her inheritance. I stood up and slipped the dollar into my pocket. My legs felt heavy as I moved toward the exit, passing cousins who looked anywhere but at me. I could taste the shame, bitter and metallic, at the back of my throat. Outside, the porch was empty. The boards beneath my shoes were warm. I leaned on the railing, steadying my breath. The cicadas screamed around me. I closed my eyes, the sun sharp behind my eyelids. A memory flickered, Isolda and me as children on those very steps. She shoved me aside to sit at the top, telling me, "You're too slow, May." I'd brushed off my scraped knees like it didn't matter. I pulled the dollar from my pocket, staring at it until the ink blurred. I wanted to crush it, toss it, but I couldn't. Maybe I needed to hold on to the sting. The door creaked open behind me. I heard footsteps, soft but certain. I didn't turn until she spoke. Isolde's voice, sweet like honey, laced with poison. "Oh, don't look so pathetic," she said, standing beside me. "It's just $1. You always did love the drama." I didn't respond. I wouldn't give her that. But inside me, something snapped. Quiet. Final. She leaned closer, voice dropping. "I earned this, you know. Dad said you were always a letdown. But at least you leave without a fuss." I turned, looked her in the eyes. Calm. "You think you've won." Her smile flickered, just for a moment, before she scoffed. "Please, May. Don't start thinking you're special now." I pushed away from the railing, brushing past her with the dollar still in my grip. Every step felt like I was pushing through sand. I reached the door. I didn't know what came next. But the shame in me had begun to harden into something else, something slow and steady and burning deep. Just as my fingers reached the handle, I heard Marshall's voice through the open door. "There is one more document from Walter Garner." I stopped. Even the cicadas went silent. I turned back slowly, my hand still hovering over the door. His voice came again, measured, deliberate. "There is one more document from Walter Garner." The words sank into the room like a stone in still water. I saw my mother's grip tighten on her glass, the control on her face slipping. Isolde's laughter stopped. Her champagne dropped to her hip as her eyes darted between Marshall and me. Conrad cleared his throat, jaw tense like he was fighting back something bitter. Marshall stepped forward, holding an old envelope. My grandfather's handwriting was unmistakable, looping letters, slightly slanted, always in blue ink. He told me once, "Black is for bills. Blue's for dreams." The dollar still pressed against my leg, sharp with meaning. As Marshall opened the letter, the paper rustled softly. And suddenly, I wasn't in that heavy, stifling room anymore. I was on Grandpa's porch outside Charleston, magnolias in bloom, damp earth beneath us, wind chimes dancing in the breeze. I was sitting cross-legged in the dirt, hair tied back, while Grandpa showed me how to tie knots for the tomato trellis. His hands, weathered and sure, moved slowly so I could follow each step. "You're my little scientist, May," he said, pride softening the worn edges of his face. "One day you'll have your own space to build whatever you want, and no one will be able to tell you no." The memory wavered and slipped away just as Marshall's voice filled the room again, his words cutting clean through the heavy silence. "To my granddaughter, Camila Garner, who never stopped seeing wonder in a world where others chose blindness." The words rooted deep inside me, warm, sharp, and unexpected, like rain soaking into dry earth. My chest tightened, but I kept my chin lifted, shoulders square. I wouldn't let them see a single crack. Not when his voice was back in the room, even if only through ink and paper. Marshall's gaze moved across the room with careful precision as he continued reading. "I leave to Camila the Whitman Research Annex, along with all lab equipment, financial accounts, and all active patents registered under Whitman Innovation." The air changed instantly. Not a single sound, just a stunned stillness as if the whole room had forgotten how to breathe. Isolde's complexion drained to ash, her hands trembling as the glass slipped from her grip, hitting the hardwood floor with a quiet thud. Champagne splashed across the polished surface, but she didn't flinch. She just stared at Marshall, her mouth slightly open, no words coming. Vera whipped her head toward him, her voice a sharp whisper edged in ice. "This wasn't the plan, Marshall." Conrad shifted again, setting his glass down with an audible clink, tracing the rim absently with his thumb, eyes far away, calculating, cold. Then Isolde found her voice, and it cracked with disbelief and fury. This is absurd. That annex was meant for me. She doesn't even do anything with her life. Her words sliced through the air like glass. I stood still, the letter in Marshall's hand like proof that I'd never been as invisible as they all wanted me to believe. That dollar bill in my pocket no longer felt like shame, it felt like something solid. A symbol. A reminder of who had really seen me. Vera hissed under her breath, stepping toward Marshall. Fix this, she said, cold and sharp. Now. Marshall didn't budge. His fingers rested lightly on the envelope, face unreadable. I'm afraid this was Walter's final decision. It stands. Then came the explosion. Voices rising, shouts layered on top of accusations, fury swirling around me. Vera's cold outrage. Isolde's protests. Conrad finally shouting, enough, before slumping back into his chair, rubbing his temples like he couldn't stand the noise. I barely heard them. I focused instead on the weight of the letter in my hand, the rough paper, worn edges, the faint smell of Grandpa's tobacco and the sawdust from his workshop. Mint, too, from the candies he always kept in his pocket just for me. I lifted my eyes to watch them, fighting over the pieces of a legacy they thought belonged to them by default. But I felt something different rising in me. Not shame. Not fear. Something solid and steady, anchored and undeniable. My fingers curled around the letter. I took a breath that felt like the first real breath I'd had in days and said, quiet but clear. Steady and clear. I need to see it. I didn't wait for the arguing to stop. I turned and walked out, my steps slow but certain. The heat from inside still clung to my skin, but the outside air was cooler, the cicadas buzzing as if to remind me, the world keeps turning, no matter what breaks. 2 days later, I was driving alone down a narrow dirt road, pine trees and scrub oaks rising up on either side. Charleston's humid air clung to the windows of my truck. Grandpa's letter sat in the passenger seat, soft and worn at the creases, like it had been waiting for me to finally come back. Isolde's voice still echoed in my head. The way she'd screamed about what was hers, the way her eyes passed over me like I didn't exist. I pulled up to the research annex just as dawn lit up the sky, golden light hitting the tin roof and making the glass panels shimmer like mirrors. It looked like an old barn that had been restored with love and purpose. Strong. Honest. Waiting. I stepped out. Gravel crunched beneath my boots. I paused at the door, breathing in the morning air like it could wash their voices out of my head. I remembered Grandpa's words, one day you'll have your own space. You won't need to ask anyone for it. My grip tightened on the handle and I pushed the door open. The smell hit me first, cedar, machine oil, the scent of real work. It wasn't pristine or polished. It was purposeful. Sunlight streamed in through the windows, illuminating rows of microscopes, clean lab benches, and boxes labeled in Grandpa's handwriting, Camilla Garner. It felt like walking into a dream I'd forgotten how to dream. A place I had imagined 100 times, and somehow, it had been real all along. At the center of the room sat a worn spiral notebook, its corners curled, cover creased. I froze. It was mine. The notebook I thought I lost when I was 12, filled with sketches of bees, soil notes, messy diagrams of plants, and questions I had scribbled in the margins when I thought no one cared. Grandpa had kept it. All of it. I sat at the stool, turning each page like it was a memory I had buried, and he had saved. My phone buzzed. Elo's name lit up. I answered without thinking. May? You there? Her voice, warm and grounded, cut through the quiet. Yeah, I said softly. Document everything. Photos, videos, keep a record. You don't know what they'll try to spin. I nodded, even though she couldn't see. I will. After we hung up, I moved through the space slowly. Touching surfaces. Opening drawers. Letting the silence settle deep in my chest. The grief was there, thick and heavy. For the time stolen. For what could have been. At Grandpa's old desk, the bottom drawer resisted before giving way. I pulled it open. Inside were neatly stacked pages. Phone logs. His handwriting scrawled across dates, times, numbers, all mine. Every line marked with no answer. Calls I never got. They had blocked him. Kept us apart. Stolen every last chance to say goodbye. To sit on the porch one last time. To hear his voice again. I clutched the pages to my chest, the truth slamming into me, raw and furious. It wasn't just the dollar bill. It wasn't about the inheritance. They had tried to erase me. But Grandpa hadn't. He had remembered. Protected. Chosen. And now, in this place he'd made for me, surrounded by everything he'd saved, I felt something inside harden. Resolve. Cold and clear. I looked toward the light pouring in through the windows, the pages crumpling softly in my grip. You tried to erase me, I whispered. But I'm still here. I held the call logs close until the sun dipped behind the annex, golden light turning the windows into quiet mirrors. In one, I saw my own reflection, weary but present. Jaw set. Eyes that wouldn't look away. That woman was me. And I wouldn't let them disappear me again. A week later, I was standing at the edge of the stone walkway leading to the Garner estate. Oak branches shifted above me, whispering in the morning breeze. My boots struck the stones softly as I moved forward. Leaves rustled gently. A lone bird called. And I walked toward what was next. The weight of Grandpa's letter and the call logs tugged at my side, each step up the familiar path a vow I was finally ready to keep. I had asked Marshall to be present, and he had agreed without pause. Elin had parked a few houses down, her message still lit my screen, unread, "You've got this. Call if they try anything." I tucked the phone into my pocket, drew in a steadying breath, and climbed the porch steps. Inside, the scent of brewed coffee mingled with that unmistakable tang of lemon polish, Vera's attempt to maintain the illusion of order. She was perched on the couch, her hands folded just so, her mouth drawn into the tight line that once silenced me with a glance. Isolde sprawled in the armchair, her nails clacking against her phone screen with deliberate disregard. Conrad leaned by the hearth, arms crossed, eyes cold and calculating, as though I were trespassing in the home that raised me. Marshall stepped forward with that calm resolve that always made Vera stiffen. "Thank you for agreeing to this. We're here to ensure the will's terms are fully understood and to resolve any outstanding legal matters." Isolde let out a dismissive laugh, her eyes glued to her screen. "We've already taken care of everything." I stepped forward, unzipping my bag and drawing out the printed call logs. The pages fluttered in my hands like feathers caught in wind. My voice didn't shake. "No, we haven't. You told him I didn't care. And you told me he didn't want me. You lied to both of us." Isolde's head whipped up, her expression sharpening into that same smug twist she used when she wanted to remind me I was never the chosen one. "Stop playing the victim, Camila. You're twisting things." Vera's eyes flicked toward the papers in my grip, then to Marshall, before darting away. "This isn't necessary," she murmured, but her voice cracked halfway through. I reached into the bag once more, setting Grandpa's letter on the table like the last piece of truth. He called me the one who saw what others refused to. "You stole the chance for me to say goodbye." Conrad shifted uneasily, his boots dragging slightly across the wood floor. "That's the past, May," he offered, trying to sound gentle but falling short. Nothing can change that now. Later, once the video was edited, I uploaded it quietly to our community group, the one where people posted about lost pets, garden tips, and weekend events. No commentary. No music. Just Grandpa's voice, calm and certain, speaking his truth. Within hours, Eloyne texted, "It's spreading." By morning, it had trickled through local blogs and popped up in the social feeds of the very people who once shopped at the family jewelry store, who praised Vera's church attire, who believed in the facade we all helped maintain. The views rose steadily. The comments poured in, some shocked, others angry, many simply saying, "We believe you." They kept her away from him, for money? One person wrote. "Always felt something wasn't right about that family," said another. That afternoon, I heard from Eloyne again. Clients were canceling appointments at the jewelry shop, others were calling, demanding explanations. Vera's carefully polished image was cracking. At Isolda's job, gossip buzzed louder than ever. Her phone screen shattered against her office wall after someone forwarded the video to her. She tried to lead a branding meeting the next morning, only for her boss to pull her aside. "Take some time off," he said quietly. "Handle your family matters." That night, she came home seething, slamming the front door so hard it rattled the windows. She shouted at Vera, accusing me of destroying everything, calling me a charity case who'd just gotten lucky. Their rage was loud, their words sharp, but I could hear the fear beneath it all. Their picture-perfect lives were shattering, and the town was finally seeing the fractures. Meanwhile, I was rooted in the annex, where the light hit the floor just right and the air smelled of cedar and old machines. I catalogued Grandpa's research, dusted off neglected patent files, and began filing his notes properly. 2 grad students from the nearby university joined me, eager, bright-eyed, helping breathe life into the data on bees, soil, and sustainable growth. Out back, the greenhouse began to bloom again, tomatoes twining up twine, herbs perfuming the air with basil and rosemary. What I hadn't expected was the quiet knock at the annex door, neighbors bringing jars of jam, loaves of bread, soft-spoken thanks for telling the truth. They shared stories, how Grandpa fixed their fences, left vegetables on porches, helped without needing praise. Each memory brought him closer, reminded me his legacy wasn't just science or property. It was how he made people feel, seen, heard, helped. One quiet afternoon, I was adjusting the irrigation settings when a car door clicked shut outside. I stepped out to see Grandma Ida walking carefully down the path. She looked smaller now, her spine slightly curved, but her eyes were steady as ever. She said nothing, just held out a small, weathered box. Inside it was Grandpa's pocket watch, worn but polished, its hinges squeaking faintly as I opened it. A small photo had been tucked inside, me as a child, grinning wide on Grandpa's lap, proudly holding up a jar glowing with a firefly. Ida's voice was soft but firm. "He wanted you to have this." He never stopped waiting. Tears spilled before I could stop them, dotting the dusty gravel between us. She reached out, patting my hand before drawing me into a soft, trembling hug. We stood there in the sun-drenched silence, the scent of tomato vines heavy in the air, the watch ticking against my palm. That evening, I sat by the annex window, the sunset melting across the horizon in warm streaks of orange and gold. The pocket watch sat beside me, ticking steadily, a quiet rhythm echoing time lost and time still left. I glanced at my phone and saw a notification. Vera and Isolda had filed in court, trying to freeze the annex funds, one last attempt to hold on to power. But Marshall called not long after, voice steady as ever, to tell me the court had dismissed their request. Grandpa's trust had been ironclad, undeniable, immutable, like his faith in me. I leaned back in my chair, letting a quiet wave of relief wash over me, mixed with lingering grief and a fierce, steady sense of triumph. I picked up Grandpa's pocket watch, pressing it against my chest, feeling the warmth of its ticking merge with my breath. As the sun dipped behind the trees, casting the annex in muted gold, I whispered into the gathering dusk. You tried to erase me. But all you did was forge me. I stood by the annex window a while longer, watching day slip into night, the watches ticking like a heartbeat in my palm. Slipping it back into my coat, I drew a breath and moved to switch off the lights, locking the door behind me. Outside, the air was crisp, that unmistakable sharpness that comes just before winter settles in. Another week passed, the days falling into a quiet rhythm. I spent time with the students in the greenhouse, checked supply deliveries, drafted outlines for a soil regeneration project Grandpa had once mapped out in pencil. I was finally creating a life I wanted, one piece at a time, with my own 2 hands. Then, Vera sent a message. She wanted to meet, just me and her, at the old family house. I stared at her text for a while before forwarding it to Eloine. Her reply came fast. Be careful. Don't go alone if you can help it. I understood her warning, but I also knew this was something I couldn't avoid. I had to face it, not run from it. That afternoon, beneath a sky thick with gray clouds, I parked outside the house I used to call home. I sat in the truck for a moment, listening to the engine tick before it went still. Each step I took up the gravel path was deliberate, the pocket watch warm in my coat like a steady anchor. Vera answered the door herself, strange in itself. Her hair was pinned with precision, but the lines around her eyes betrayed her. She didn't say anything, just stepped aside. Inside, the house smelled like old polish and one of Vera's scented candles, the usual attempt to mask the staleness of things long hidden. Isolde sat stiffly at the edge of the couch, phone in hand though the screen was dark. She looked worn, her carefully curated image faltering. Conrad stood by the window, arms crossed, eyes anywhere but mine, chewing on silence. No one spoke for a beat. The clock on the mantel ticked, too loud. I remained standing, the weight of the space pressing down on me, every corner echoing with memories of birthdays overlooked, criticisms disguised as concern, the constant reminder that I was never enough. Finally, Vera cleared her throat, her hands clasped in her lap. Camila, she began, her voice brittle despite the calm she tried to summon, we asked you here because this tension, it's hurting all of us. Isolde jumped in, her voice taut. We're still family. We can fix this. If you just sign over the annex, we could figure out something fair for you. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. The silence said more than I ever could. I watched them fidget under the weight of it, a reversal of the years they spent silencing me. Vera leaned forward, her voice cracking under the pressure. We did what we thought was best, for the family, for your future. We were protecting the legacy. I took a quiet breath, drawing strength from the stillness, my fingers tightening around the pocket watch. I slowly pulled it out and placed it on the coffee table between us. Its steady ticking filled the room. This, I said, voice even, is the only legacy that matters to me. Isolde's eyes narrowed. Her mouth opened, but no sound came. Her expression twisted, anger breaking through desperation. You think you're better than us, she snapped. Vera reached toward the watch, fingertips brushing it like it might tether her. Please, Camila, she whispered. We need this. I pulled my hand back gently but firmly, the space between us saying everything I never could as a child. No, I said. You don't get to take from me anymore. Conrad finally looked at me. His mouth opened, then shut. He looked down, saying nothing. But this silence was different. It wasn't oppressive. It was clean, final. I stood, slid the watch back into my pocket, and turned to leave. Each footstep was a shedding of old weights, every stride a reclamation. Out on the porch, the cold air slapped against my skin, sharp and honest. I paused, let it fill my lungs. The leaves rustled. A dog barked in the distance. The world kept moving, and I let go of the one I left behind. This, I whispered, is freedom. The wind curled around me as I stepped off the porch, each breath lighter. I got in my truck and drove into the clear, starry night. I didn't look back. The next morning, frost dusted the annex lawn. The sky was still pale when I arrived and unlocked the doors. Cold air rushed in as I opened the greenhouse first, greeted by the smell of damp soil and new growth, an unspoken promise. Inside, the annex was humming, grow lights buzzing, students chatting as they set up new trays for soil testing. I shrugged off my coat, hanging it by Grandpa's old bench, and set the pocket watch beside my laptop. Its ticking aligned with the pace of my morning. I checked emails, answered one from a mother asking if she could bring her daughter to see the bees. Of course, I told her. We'll be here all week. Come anytime. Just as I hit send, the greenhouse door opened. Ida stepped in, bundled in a thick coat, thermos in hand. You'll freeze in here, child, she muttered, settling into the chair I kept near the heater just for her. Her eyes scanned the seedlings, the notes pinned along the walls, before landing gently on me. Your grandfather would have been proud. I turned toward her, rinsing my hands in the sink by the door. He saw things in me I didn't even see in myself, I said. Ida smiled softly. He didn't just see them, Camila. He believed in them.